So let's talk about the media's differential coverage of states. We've talked about, sort of broadly speaking, the media trying to play up bad news everywhere that they possibly can, including basing it on the modeling, as opposed to, basing it on the actual outcome in places like Georgia. Remember, by the way, when we were talking about the dire outcomes for ventilators, how ventilators were necessary, more and more ventilators, everybody's going to die without a ventilator? Turns out that the vast majority of people who are on ventilators died. So, that just disappeared from the news. Meanwhile, by the way, Georgia, which is supposed to be, completely ripped up, only 866 ventilators are in use in Georgia. They have a supply of nearly 3,000 ventilators. But don't worry, the media are going to rely on projections that have been wrong in virtually every state here. And that's not to say that we should disregard the projections. It is to say that the projections change based on new data as it comes in. We just don't know very much about how this virus operates. Okay, so meanwhile, the media have been covering states differentially. I will explain, a perfect example. Florida, Ron DeSantis ripped up and down. We talked yesterday on the program about how Ron DeSantis is one of the few governors who actually took the proactive step of saying we are not shipping patients with COVID-19 who are in nursing homes back into nursing homes. But meanwhile, he's being ripped for keeping the beaches open. Well, yesterday, Ron DeSantis went on a tear against the media. Honestly, I've been waiting months for him to do this. Here he was yesterday, just blowing through the media. It was pretty great.
Our data is available. Our data is transparent. In fact, Dr. Birx has talked multiple times about how Florida has the absolute best data. So any insinuation otherwise is just typical partisan narrative trying to be spun. And part of the reason is that because you got a lot of people in your profession who waxed poetically for weeks and weeks about how Florida was going to be just like New York. Wait 2 weeks, Florida's going to be next. Just like Italy, wait 2 weeks. Well, hell, we're 8 weeks away from that, and it hasn't happened. Not only do we have a lower death rate, well, we have way lower deaths generally. We have a lower death rate than the Acela Corridor, D.C., everyone up there. We have a lower death rate than the Midwest, Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio. But even in our region, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida has the lower death rate. And I was the #1 landing spot from tens of thousands of people leaving the #1 hot zone in the world to come to my state. So we've succeeded, and I think that people just don't want to recognize it because it challenges their narrative, it challenges their assumption, so they got to try to find a boogeyman. Maybe it's that there are black helicopters circling the Department of Health. If you believe that, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you.
Good for him. Seriously, good for him. He's exactly right on all this. Meanwhile, you have Chris Cuomo, who's basically just giving his brother a massage on national TV every night. Last night, has Chris Cuomo ever asked his brother about protecting nursing homes? Of course not. But you know what he did do? He did some buddy comedy about how his brother has a big nose and here's a giant nasal swab for you.
This is the normal swab I'm holding up here now, and for everybody at home. A very valuable object. There's only one company in the entire country that makes these up in Maine. All right, here's the swab. Is it true that this was the swab that the nurse was actually using on you, and that at first it went into your nose and disappeared, so that in scale, this was the actual swab that was being used to fit up that double-barrel shotgun that you have mounted on the front of your pretty face?
So much newsing happening over at CNN. There's great newsing happening over at CNN. That guy is the worst governor in America. His state has experienced 30,000 deaths. 30,000. i.e. 15 times more deaths than Florida, which has a similar population. That dude is a terrible governor. But his bro is on CNN. And by the way, his bro, who's breaking quarantine and taking bleach baths in order to fight his own coronavirus, is your most trusted name in scientific news on CNN. And then people wonder why the right looks at CNN cross-eyed. Because you guys are terrible at your jobs. And meanwhile, how has your coverage been of Phil Murphy in New Jersey? Guy's been widely praised across the media. Look at him. He's so strong on these lockdowns, Phil Murphy. Look how he's shutting down these gyms. I mean, what a stud Phil Murphy is. It turns out that 1 in 13 people in nursing homes in New Jersey is dead. 1 in 13 is dead. That's Phil Murphy's state. Okay, why? Because it turns out that the state did virtually nothing to protect people in nursing homes. NewJersey.com reports, knowing nursing home residents were at grave risk, state inspectors did not begin to make on-site inspections until April 16th, according to officials. That was 36 days after New Jersey reported its first death, not until reports surfaced that one nursing facility was storing 17 bodies in a makeshift morgue. Asked why teams were not sent earlier, State Health Commissioner Judith Pershelley said in mid-April they didn't have proper fitting masks. She said she later gave hospitals first dibs on PPE, and she left a short supply of ill-fitting masks for nursing home inspectors. So for weeks, they just didn't get any PPE, which meant that some 89 people in nursing homes who worked there died. When nursing home operators urgently called for staffing help, they received little assistance. The National Guard was not deployed until May. The state health department didn't announce until earlier this month it would even conduct widespread testing of nursing home residents. Earlier this month, May. This thing broke out in March. The health department refused to publish a list of positive COVID-19 cases until 3 weeks after families pled with them to tell them what the hell was going on. And you've been seeing this in state after state. In Pennsylvania, which has been fairly hard hit, the state health director was taking he's a transgender woman, his own mother out of a nursing home facility, age 95, while simultaneously maintaining that nursing home facilities should take in people who had COVID-19. Have you heard any critique of the governorship of Tom Wolf in Pennsylvania? No, you have not, right? Only Ron DeSantis, only Brian Kemp. The differential media coverage is astonishing. It's astonishing. So which is it? Does the media love lockdown? And therefore, are they praising governors who participate in lockdown? Or is it the media and the Democrats basically have the same idea, which is they all have the same sort of political biases. If Democrats embrace a policy, so do the media, because they are one and the same. I shouldn't be asking why the media repeat Democratic talking points. The real question is why I'm even separating Democrats and the media, because they basically are the same thing at this point. Huge swaths of the so-called objective media are just Democratic aides at this point in time. And by the way, you can also see this when you talk about the coverage of the Michael Flynn story. So we have been told that the Michael Flynn story is a complete non-story, right? It's a nothing burger. And in fact, it's wrong to even cover it. You shouldn't cover the Michael Flynn story. You should only cover the Michael Flynn story when Michael Flynn was essentially being railroaded into pleading guilty on the basis of not committing a crime. But you shouldn't cover it when it turns out that the DOJ completely drops the case because it was botched from beginning to end, because the investigation never should have been maintained after early January, and because it turns out that high-ranking members of the Obama administration were involved in oversight of the Flynn matter. Now we should just kind of let it go. Why can't you guys just let this go? I mean, it's been 27 minutes since the story broke. Why can't you let the story go? The media wish to ignore this as long as possible. You've had editorial after editorial in major American newspapers saying, well, now, why would we cover this? This is not worth covering. Brian Stelter, the watchdog at CNN. Why are you covering this? I don't know. You spent 3 years covering Trump-Russia allegations that turned out to be a bowl of crap. Why shouldn't we cover a story in which it seems that members of the Obama administration were pretty intent on bending the rules, even if they were well-intentioned and thought that there was Trump-Russia collusion? Bending the rules in order to get people? Typically not good practice. And if Trump had done it about Obama incoming, you think that everybody would be quite so sanguine? Of course not. They're not even sanguine about the fact that the Senate Intelligence Committee is now looking into Hunter Biden. So why would they be sanguine if Trump were going after an Obama national security advisor? If Trump were basically unmasking Susan Rice, would they be super happy about that? Especially if you're unmasking Susan Rice in front of half the administration and then it leaked to the press? Would that be a genius move? I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date on all of our future content.